Hello and welcome to One Spark Stories, the podcast that connects you with innovators, creators, and some unsuspecting risk takers who share about navigating highs and lows, laughter and tears, and how sometimes all it takes is one spark of inspiration to find your way to happiness. This podcast will leave you inspired to take action on your own purpose as we connect, create, and celebrate unique sparks around the globe, once again proving that it is a small world after all. Today, I am so grateful to welcome the one that ultimately gave the final push I needed to get this podcast live, Jody Maberry. Jody is a former park ranger who became the happiest podcaster on earth. With more than 1,600 podcast episodes across several shows, his podcasts have been listened to more than 4 million times. Jody has been heard around the world on shows such as The Park Leaders Show, Creating Disney Magic, Come Rain or Shine, and Great Escape Radio, among many others. Jody's reputation in podcasting has led him to be featured in Inc., Entrepreneur, the Business Journals, and Bizable TV. Along with Lee Cockerell, he was nominated for Best Business Podcast and the People's Choice Awards for the popular Creating Disney Magic podcast. He has become a trusted voice for executives leaving the corporate world from well-known companies like Disney, for government officials and professional athletes, and serves as a guide in the wilderness of personal branding. Whether he is behind a podcast microphone, on the stage, or sitting at a conference table, Jody has connected with countless audiences and individuals through his storytelling and unique outside perspective. And today, it's our turn. Hello. We have Jody Maberry here with us. Jody, how are you?
Katie, it's such a treat to be here with you. I'm so excited for you and for the rest of us that you have a podcast.
It happened. I can't believe it, right? I mean, just less than a month ago, I was like, but Jody, what do I do about this? And what do I do about this? And then you finally said, just do it. So here we are.
Here we are. I did. So let me tell you something about Katie. It's a testament to her that the show is launched because she kept asking questions about little stuff. I'm not saying none of it is important, but none of it would get in the way of launching a show. And I finally had to say, Katie, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Just launch your show.
Yes. And for the other people that like to play in the weeds like me, at some point we got to get out. We just got to go for it. So yeah, it's been very fun. I will be honest though. I have this feeling, maybe you'll relate to this from when you first launched. I feel like Chris Farley in a Saturday Night Live skit where I'm like, so tell me about, and it's just that awkwardness where it's just releasing that and accepting it's fun. And we're just having a conversation.
Yeah, that's right. And it just comes with practice or getting your reps in that eventually you feel more comfortable and you realize you do know what you're doing, but it comes, I don't have an exact number for you, but I've done more than 1,600 podcast episodes now. So you can't compare yourself to me. Not that I'm better. It's just, I've done so much more. And there's a lot that comes with experience.
Yes. And what works for you may work for me. It may not. And that's okay. So it's a fun journey to be on. And I'm excited to see. I always think, be here in a year, and let's see what's happening then. So we'll get through these awkward, muddy waters. And in a year, I'll look back and go, well, that was cute. So, all right. So Jody, the way this is going to work, the 3 big pillars of One Spark are connect, create, and celebrate. And so we're going to really share your story through those aspects. But to start, we want to get to know more about you. And for the sake of time, I'm going to rapid fire a couple questions and you're going to share that first spark. So it's going to be either this or that, or just a simple response, but just share with us little glimpse into Jody Maberry. So first one, your background for those that may be watching on YouTube, you see, for listeners, this might give a hint to the first question, but Ocean view or mountain view?
Mountain view.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love the mountains.
Yes. Favorite job, previous job. What was one job that may not have been the one you were, that was your long career, but what was the favorite job?
Park ranger.
Love it.
Another easy answer.
So many themes coming up already. Favorite childhood toy?
Favorite childhood toy. You know what I was really fond of when I was younger was G.I. Joes.
Nice.
They were so versatile. You could do anything. You could battle with them, but you could also do other stuff. So
right.
G.I. Joes.
Were they like my Barbies where if you got mad, you could snap somebody's G.I. Joe arm off? And then I didn't, but that always seemed to happen.
Now I'm a little concerned about you, Katie.
I know. Sorry. Now it's therapy. Now here we've shifted. No. So G.I. Joe. I'm seeing there seems to still be a trend. The outdoors. You are quite the explorer, the adventurer. So then let me ask you this. Why did the chicken cross the road?
I heard an interesting answer. Seth Godin, so I have my own thoughts on the chicken, but Seth Godin, recently I was reading his book Lynchpin, and he said the chicken crossed the road because that's what its lizard brain told it to do. I thought, yeah, maybe Seth Godin, but that's such a boring answer.
Right.
I would like something a little more adventurous, and to think that the chicken crossed the road because it saw something better over there. I don't know. I would just like a better answer than that's what its brain told it to do. So I was a little disappointed in Seth Godin's answer, which doesn't answer your question. And Seth may very well be right, but I think the chicken crossed the road because there was a better view of the mountains over there.
Yes. You had to get off the prairie and come cross over. I like that. Yeah. I think we all feel like chickens. We all feel like we have to stay on one side, but there's got to be a reason that chicken crossed. There's something over there. So I love it. Still on the adventure theme there. So then we've got Jody out in the mountain view, explorer. Who would play you in a movie?
So this is a really interesting question because I just watched a movie that I wish I could remember the name, but it had Nicolas Cage in it, and it was about a guy who went to Afghanistan, Pakistan to try to capture Osama bin Laden himself. And it's about a real guy, real story that happened. And in the end, they asked, who would you want to play you in a movie? And it's Nicolas Cage playing the character. And the character said, Nicolas Cage. I thought, how funny is that?
That's
I thought that was pretty neat. So it was interesting, though, you asked that, because back in the National Treasure days, I would have said, oh, that would be cool to have Nicolas Cage play me. But, now, I don't know. But that was the first name that came to mind. So
I like that, though.
I guess Nicolas Cage.
Always up for an adventure. National Treasure. That's such a good one, too. Very cool.
Yeah, those were fun movies.
Yes. So, there's the mountainside, the adventure side. This is going to start leading into more of our conversation. What would you say is the biggest misconception of you?
The biggest misconception of me, I don't know, maybe ask my wife that, because I'm not entirely sure what it is, because I haven't spent much time thinking about it. I'm either outside playing or my head's down working, and I really haven't thought very much about what do people have wrong about me, because I don't know. I'm just me. Maybe that I don't know. I really don't have an answer for you, Katie. I was going to try to make something up, but
no, but that's a huge testament to you moving forward in your life in a way that you're like, this is me and I'm doing what I love and I'm moving that direction, and all that noise is in the past. That's not going to influence your decisions and the way you move. So,
well, and I hope it doesn't. And Katie has spent a lot of time with me on Zoom, and we've been together in person. We've even played miniature golf together. And I hope what you discovered, Katie, is that Jody Maberry was the exact same Jody Maberry you hear on podcasts, that there really is no difference. Maybe I put on a bigger show on a podcast and I try to enunciate words better in person. I mean, on a podcast than I do in real life, but otherwise it should be the same guy. I hope that's true.
Well, it is, but I will say there's a little competitiveness in you that I did not expect. You get on the little mini golf putt-putt court and you better be ready. Jody doesn't mess around.
No.
How many rounds did you do that weekend?
I played one with you in the bigger group. I played another against Mike Simmons.
We did 2 that night.
We did 2. Okay. So we did 2. I did 4 total.
I mean, just know that when you are around Jody, you need to be ready. Be ready there. That's a whole nother lesson learned that night that we could get into another time with myself and my golf game, my mini golf game. That was quite a very cool start to a powerful few days that leads me into the connection piece and how we first got connected. I was trying to think when I finally reached out to you, because I had been listening to the podcast that you've done, which, Jody, actually, let's stop there. Give us a quick overview of what you are doing right now.
Well, if anybody knows me for anything, it's probably from podcasting. As I said earlier, I've done 1,600 episodes. But the one show most people know of, if they know me, is Creating Disney Magic with Lee Cockerell. So Lee ran Disney World for a decade, has 4 wonderful books out, and that show has done really well. Very popular, been on the top 100 management podcasts in iTunes for 5-6 years straight now. So a lot of people know me from that show. It all started with a show for park rangers, though, the Park Leader Show, which is still going. I started that in 2014. Creating Disney Magic also started in 2014. So podcasting has been a staple in everything that I've done. But this is where it gets fun. So I work with executives like Lee Cockerell, ran Disney World. So I help him build what's next after. So all that knowledge, that wisdom, content in his head, I help get it out, turn it into stories, put it on podcasts, put it out to people. And then Lee and I do courses together and live events. I use Lee as an example because I work so close with him, but I do the same thing for several other former executives to help them. Because that's the thing. If you spend, let's say, 30 years in a company, you don't know everything you know. And you don't realize how special it is because you've been surrounded by it for decades. So that's where I get to help bring all of that out and pick out the best stories and the best. All right, you need to talk about this and let's do that. So that's what I get to do. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I get to see the work that I do with people end up influencing and shaping a lot of other people. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
And I love that because as somebody else that just loves a story, I love the history of people. We often don't get that chance to share where we've been and that knowledge. And like you said, when we're so close to something, we don't realize the value and what it holds. Not everybody understands how many acronyms are in companies that you just start saying and don't realize that's not normal. So it's beautiful that you're able to share those stories while also acknowledging that your story has shifted over the years. You've got the park leaders, you work with the executives many from the Disney company, and that's not even the start of your story. Yours even goes further back than that you were in the financial industry. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was a financial analyst at a commercial bank, and it was exactly what I thought I wanted to do, what I went to school for. And I would wear a shirt and tie to work every day, felt fancy, had 2 computers so I could monitor 2 things at once. The biggest part of what I did was measure interest rate risk. So if interest rates went up or down, what would it do to the bank? And then I bought and sold money depending on if we had excess or we needed some. So that's what I did. And every day I'd get off work and I would go hiking in the summer. Where I live, the weather gets lousy in the winter, but every day I would go hiking, and that just eventually led to becoming a park ranger, because why wouldn't I? But it all started as a financial analyst, and I made the jump probably just in time, because I did it before we had kids. And you hunker down a bit once you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was willing to take that big risk with me, and so I left being a financial analyst and became a park ranger, which is quite a shift. You don't meet many park rangers that used to be financial analysts.
And I love that. And then even now with working with the executives and helping tell their story, it's just a testament to when you find that spark, when you find that thing that lights you up, it's going to guide you. It's okay to make that shift. The days of having, this planned trajectory, you don't have to do that. You can shift and still do very well. And having a supportive partner, that's a huge piece. So we're grateful that you shifted.
Oh, thank you. Well, so am I. And during my 8 years as a park ranger, I don't think this is an exaggeration to say there were 200 times someone would come up to me and say, I always wanted to be a park ranger, but, and then what came after the but was the details were different, but it was usually the same. Their parents wanted them to do something, or whatever. They ended up doing something different. And I didn't become a park ranger. I mean, I was 27 when I became a park ranger, which is still very young, but that's also at a stage where a lot of people have settled in.
Yeah.
So it's not too late. You can always make the shift.
Yes. And I love that. Little moment in my story was when I left the classroom, I was in consulting, and then I completely pivoted and went into facilities management and worked with businesses on HVAC sales. And people are like, you taught kindergarten 3 years ago, and now you're doing this. So, but again, there was an energy there to help them redesign that team and help them think about new ways to connect with the community and share their message. And so it's still storytelling. It was still teaching, just in a different field. And again, when you follow that passion, it'll take you some weird places if you're willing to acknowledge it. And it's exciting.
Well, most people underestimate the range of abilities that teachers have, because you see that a teacher may say to themselves, and I did as a former park ranger, but a teacher may say to themselves, where do I belong in the business world? I'm a school teacher. But you also know how to hold people's attention. If you can hold a kid's attention, you can hold an adult's attention. You can tell stories, you can teach, you can manage a crowd, the administration. I mean, there's so much teachers know how to do, but they say, where do I belong in the business world? I am a school teacher. Park rangers would say the same thing. Police officers, whatever.
Yes.
People get caught up thinking what I do here doesn't translate to here. And when I left being a park ranger and got into the business world, I thought it's going to give me a disadvantage. People are going to look at me differently because I was a park ranger. So, well, after leaving parks, I went back to school and got an MBA, and that's what I would lead with. Then I found out nobody cares if you have an MBA, because everybody has one. They're no big deal, but it is a big deal to have been a park ranger, because not many people know former park rangers, especially rangers that went on to do something like I do. So now you'll never hear me talk about having an MBA. You'll always hear me talk about being a park ranger, because it makes an instant connection with people, because it gets them interested and so forth. So it took me a couple of years to realize that. But once I did, that's what I lead with now.
Yeah. And I love that. Own your story. It's yours. Isn't the whole notion, be your own hero. You are the hero of your story, and you can now guide others that way. And I think that, myself included, stepping out of an environment that was very much about, this is your role, then you climb the ladder, you climb. It was constantly justifying. In order to get the financial climb, you had to go to more courses, you had to get another certificate. So there was always this feeling that we had to lead with that credential, with the data. And to your point, you step outside of that, nobody ever asks, nobody ever wonders. I could walk in a room, and as long as I walk in confidently and say, hey, I am a podcaster. I may only have a few episodes in, but I am, and own it. Well, guess what? That's not my story. Now, the history, how I got here, might be a little funky, but it's cool to hear you say, I worked through it, and now it's a chapter. It's probably a process, though.
It's a process. Yes, that's the one thing that I want to be careful about, is to make it all seem like it was easy. And I realize I just casually glanced over, oh, it's no big deal to have an MBA. Everybody has one. That's not true. And it was a lot of hard work to get it. And there I just glance over it. And it was a lot of hard work to get 1,600 episodes of various podcasts. I mean, all of that is work, but that's the theme that I want you to hear, is sticking with it and putting in the work. And it comes, for me, the only difference between you and I, Katie, is when it comes to podcasting, is time and pressure, because I've put a lot of time in and I've kept the pressure on for years, and you're just getting started. So that's the only difference. Someday you could be on the opposite side of this interview talking about having 1,000 podcast episodes, but you've got to start somewhere, which I did in 2014. And it wasn't as easy back then as it is now to get a podcast going.
Yes.
Now there's so many good tools and resources, and it's way more user-friendly now than it was then. So you're starting at a great time.
Yes. And I am so grateful, which it's nice to have all these resources. And truly, I could be in my car recording. It's fascinating the way the accessibility, but with all those, that noise comes in, which is the best. Well, they're using this. Should I use that? So again, remembering that it's the consistency piece. It's not, you'll learn and grow just a little bit at a time. Little dose here, first let's figure out how to upload it. Let's start there.
Yeah.
That's usually a good place.
That's right. Disney has the concept 80 and go. You just get 80% of the way there, and then you go, and then you make the adjustments. And you were, I'll tell you, Katie was trending towards, let's get it to 100%. And then I'll go because it's easier that way. It almost gives you an excuse not to do it. Well, I can't do it because there's these 3 options to record, and I don't know which one is best yet. And that's actually the conversation Katie and I had when I finally had to say, Katie, stop. It's not important. Just go. Start with Zoom, and you can shift to one of the other ones later if you want to, but none of it matters if you don't start.
Right. And truly part of it is, we don't even know, and this is in business, this is with your family. If you try to make it 100%, no matter what, something's going to have to change anyway. So why not put it out there and realize, oh, you know what? This is actually what needs to be worked on. Not what I thought was in demand, not what I thought the guest, the client, the customer, my kids wanted. It's just adjusting as we go. And I don't like the term fake it till you make it. I just think you are it. You just be it and continue it. Just move forward and adjust. Life's too short to keep dwelling. And I'm getting better and better with saying, you know what, forget it. The last 2 years have gone to the wayside anyway.
That's right. Well, someday, Katie, you're going to come back, you're going to listen to this, and you're going to think, gosh, I can't believe I just wasn't very good. I can't believe I didn't know better. Why did I do it that way? But I promise you, it is better to look back and think I could have done better than to look back a year from now and say, why didn't I start?
Yes.
I listened to my early episodes in 2014. I was not very good, but I was doing it. And if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't started in early 2014 with the Park Leader Show, I wouldn't have been ready when the opportunity came to do a podcast with Lee Cockerell. And then that opened up so much. And now all these years later, look at where it's at. So I can look back and say, oh my goodness, I was not good But I'd rather look back and say I could have done so much better than to look back and say I wish I would have started.
Yeah. And because you did start, you have not only connected people to your ideas, your thoughts, your experiences, and the stories of others, but you've truly brought people together, to the point that in the same room, we are together for a mastermind event, for example. But what what built that connection to you was actually, I think it was 2 years ago almost. And I had been listening for a while. I had listened to Lee's podcast, but when you did an episode and it was about your grandpa dying, and you listed things that he had shared, and it was not but a couple weeks after my grandpa had actually passed, and it resonated with me so much. It just really, I thought, wow, to be able to have the opportunity to acknowledge what he did in your life and what he brought, and also get your own type of spin and message out with it. How powerful. And it just, that was the first time where I was like, okay, I've heard this guy before, but now I get it. Now I get that he's got a story to tell. And you've been doing that. You add little excerpts. How have you balanced, when it's the expertise versus it's Jody? It's just my thoughts.
Well, I think it's always both.
Yeah, that's
it's
fair.
all so I like when I go to an event, I will take notes about what I learned, and I try to, and this will come back to what you talked about, that I try to make it as personal as I can. Like, this is what I got out of the event. And that episode you're referring to, I could have, the easiest would have been to not talk about it at all. But I decided I had to. It was actually my Uncle Jerry.
Uncle Jerry. My grandpa had passed. Grandpa was in my head.
Yeah. So it was my Uncle Jerry who had a big impact on me. And I thought, what a tribute to him to just talk about him. And I'm glad I did, because that's what started our connection. Several people reached out about that. And that whole episode was completely me. But I also shared what Jerry taught. So where's the line between being an expert in something? I only use that term because you did. Being an expert and just being Jody. Well, I think they're kind of one and the same, because that's what the Jody Maberry show is all about. That's why I named it the Jody Maberry Show instead of something fancy related to marketing or business or whatever. Because I thought a lot of people know me from these other shows I'm on, but this one will be just me, and I can share anything I want. I can share personal stories. I can share behind the scenes on working with people. So that was the whole point of the Jody Maberry Show, was that I don't have to always be an expert and talk about one topic. That if Uncle Jerry dies from COVID, I can just take an episode and talk about Uncle Jerry and what I learned and the impact he had on me. So that was the point of the whole show. So I'm glad you have felt that, because that's what it was supposed to be all along.
Yeah. And you're totally right about the expertise piece, because I've always felt that expertise comes through vulnerability. We can all read a book. We can all quote something. I could cite something if I need to, but when you connect it to that story, you're sharing something in a way that it resonated. It resonated with a message that you could have just spewed facts and been like, great, here we go, more numbers. and that to me translates as expertise. So you're right. I think my head is more at the interview piece. Like, let's call in Lee and let's hear Lee's words of wisdom, which Lee is the same, I feel. So, he transfers knowledge through his stories, through his experiences. So maybe it's the fact that you're shifting the notion of what that experience and expertise looks like through your podcasts.
Yeah, it could be. And I maybe some of it just comes from being a park ranger as well, because that's what we do is we interpret what's around us. And if someone comes to the park and we help them learn about the natural world and how things got that way and why it matters. And so perhaps that's where it comes from, because maybe now that's what I do through podcasting and courses and live events and speaking is I just help interpret the world. And it if it feels different, perhaps it's because it's the way a park ranger would do it. Because if you come to the park and I want you to learn about something, there's a particular way we tell it. And then that makes sure it gets your attention and that hopefully you'll take action based on it. And I apply that to podcasts, and when I give speeches as well, I apply it. It's a very, it's not like I've uncovered a secret, because interpreters, whether it's a park ranger or someone that works at a zoo or a museum, they all know how to do it in a way where you tell a story and you tell why it matters, and then you try to get people to take action based on it. And it works. I can think about the impact. I grew up in Peoria, Illinois, and I can still remember connecting with, there was a TV show, Zoo for You. I remember that show had such a big impact on me, and what became a love for wildlife all started right there. And it's because they understood how to interpret.
Yeah. And that goes to show, again, those little sparks, that moment you went, oh my gosh, this show it's evoking something in me. And you continued to connect with people. You reached out and it got you all the way here. The second episode that connected my story and yours is probably the first one you would guess, but the one when you interviewed the fantastic Reggie Williams. And I was so excited. That was another episode that, aside the obvious Bengals fandom, his story is one that just I can listen to all the time. And hearing him tell firsthand about his life and his resiliency, as he says in his book, the resiliency, resilient by nature, it got me thinking, I have to meet Reggie. And there's parts of me that get crazy like that. I'm like, no, there's something calling me. And I will never forget, I was mowing with my AirPods turned all the way up, and I'm like documenting all the quotes. I probably have them filed in my phone still somewhere, and reached out to you thinking, I've got to tell Jody how excited I am to hear this story, because I was a kid when Reggie was in the Super Bowl. And so I sent that picture, my shirt, like, yo, tell Reggie that this is great. And then just a couple of weeks ago, here we all are, and Reggie's there. And I'm like, well, that's not manifesting something. I don't know what is. But again, you have been able to take all of your experiences and position it. So how do you continue to, flood in these connections and reach out? Are you just, how does that happen? How are you finding these connections and really just experiencing each day, finding new stories?
Well, first, let me say how cool that was, that if you hadn't taken action, you could have just listened to the episode with Reggie and found it good entertainment. But here's the difference. Katie reached out and sent me an email. Love Reggie Williams. This is why. Sent me a picture of her in her Super Bowl 1989 t-shirt. And I actually sent that to Reggie, and Reggie posted it on social media. He was so happy to see that. That was a nice flashback.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And how cool is that, to grow up a lifelong Bengals fan and to be a Reggie Williams fan? And then now he posts about you on social media.
Yeah.
And then to get to meet him. So it's pretty incredible if you just take the action. So Katie could have said, I've got no chance to meet Reggie, but that would have been saying no for everyone else involved. And instead she said, I'm going to meet Reggie. And look at this, we made it happen. And it's incredible. So then to circle back to your other question, how do I make these connections and make stuff like this happen? And one is I think I'm a good guy to be around. And that helps in a lot of ways, because then people recommend me. So I'm good at what I do and I'm a good guy to be around. That makes me recommendable. And once you're recommendable, then people start reaching out to you or make connections. And I was connected to Reggie because he worked with Lee Cockerell, and Lee connected us. And then I reached out to Reggie, and then we became friends. And next thing you know, I'm introducing Reggie to Katie.
And okay, so not to go too Disney here, but it really is a small world, because Heather, who is also on the podcast, she worked with Reggie at Wide World of Sports when he was there. So they're very connected. She actually texted me when he posted on social media and was like, Katie, is that you? I'm like, oh my gosh, it is. So it's so funny how worlds collide if you're willing to just put yourself out there, reach out. And so it sounds like with you, it's the same. You just, if you're curious, you follow that curiosity.
That's right. And don't say no for other people, because Katie, if we use that example, she could have said, Reggie will say no. I'm not going to reach out. Reggie will say no. But Reggie didn't say no when the chance came. I could have said all those years ago, well, Lee Cockerell will say no to being a guest on the Park Leader Show, but I'm not going to say no for Lee. I'll let him say no for himself. I'll ask the question, and he didn't say no. And now look, all these years later. And by the way, Reggie Williams said that Katie is perhaps the coolest Bengals fan he's ever met.
You heard it here first. No. Well, I just love that not only did Reggie, that we get to hang out a couple weeks ago, but now we get to enjoy the excitement of Bengals going back to the Super Bowl. And I'm just not being too optimistic, because who knows how things will go, but it's really just a cool way that everything's come full circle at this moment. So truly, just when we lead with that excitement and curiosity, it takes us to some really wild places.
Now, I'm not saying there's a direct connection, but I will point out that the year you and Reggie finally meet in person, the Bengals go to the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying there's a direct connection, but I'm also saying
just this magnetism was happening.
Yeah,
and
that's
yet
right.
Neither of us are going. What about that? Jeez. No, it's so cool. And I love, again, just that curiosity has led you to connect with so many people, share their stories. And really, you've got the Park Leaders, you have Jody Maberry show, you've got Lee Cockerell's Creating Disney Magic. Where do you see the next creation? Is it more on the behind the scenes side, or can we expect another Jody Maberry show 2.0?
Well, I don't know if I have a need to launch another podcast where I'm the star of the show, but I do know there's one more podcast coming this year with a former Disney executive. So that's coming. Awesome. Perhaps the show I'm most excited about, and I hope this happens, is my son, who's 16, wants to start his own podcast about student leaders. So I will help him with that. That's pretty incredible.
Yes.
And now is the time, after doing behind the scenes work on so many podcasts, I'm finally getting my knowledge out there in the form of courses. So Katie has done one of my courses called Podcast Magic. Mm-hmm. So that's all about having a great show. I've got one coming called Podcast Guest Magic, which is how to make the most out of being a guest on someone else's show. So after all these years of doing interviews and seeing what people do right, I've combined all of that into one and say, look, if you want to be the best guest ever, here's all the things. Now, it's hard to do all of them every time, but if you wanted to, it's there. And then the third one is Interview Magic, which is about how to do great interviews. So I'm finally getting all of that out there, because I found I can't help everybody that wants my help. So I can make up for that, though, by putting it into courses, and then it's available for people. So I'm excited about that. That's finally coming this year. And Lee and Cockerell and I do the Cockerell Academy, and later this month, we're working on the next new course. And that's always a big deal to me, to just take something. And so this next course is going to be better meetings, which perhaps doesn't sound too exciting, but believe me, if you sit in on a lot of corporate meetings, then we all need better meetings. So this is something that can work on changing the culture in organizations. And that to me is pretty exciting. I know Lee and I can devote some time to doing this course, and then it has ripple effects through organizations and improves people's lives because they're going to go to better meetings. Now, we've done some bigger courses in the Cockerell Academy on customer service, on leadership, on inclusion. So we've tackled a lot of big topics, and this is one of the first times we're narrowing in on something small in particular. Like, you should be having better meetings in your organization, and this is exactly how you do it. So I'm excited about that, even though you may say better meetings, but believe me, it's needed, and it's going to be great. So I really like creating stuff like that because I know it helps people.
Well, and it's cool that you are known as the podcast guy, essentially, but you just laid out all the other opportunities that come with that podcast piece. So when we launch into the idea of, oh, I want to do a podcast, or, oh, I want to code, I want to figure this out. Well, guess what? Suddenly you're an expert, or you're providing value, and people are going to want more. They want more and more. And so being open to that innovation and being open to say, hey, meetings are really crappy. Let's figure out how to fix it, and throw the pebble in the water and know that we've made a ripple. Now, hopefully it continues to go. So kudos for not just stopping with the podcast and seeing that opportunity.
Well, you've touched on something important. If someone comes to me and says, I want to start a podcast, if one of the first questions or topics they bring up is monetization, it's a big buzzword in podcasting. If that's one of the first things they bring up, I say, I'm probably not your guy. There's other people that can show you how to get sponsors faster or whatever. But what I do is show you how to create a solid base of content so people know what you're about. And perhaps more importantly, you know what you're about, because then you've got the base to build. What it could be blog posts, it could be courses, it could be speaking, everything that I do now has been built on the back of podcasting. That's what I can show you. Now, can I show you how to start a podcast and within 4 weeks be making $10,000 a month from podcast sponsorships? No, that's not me. Maybe someone else can teach you that, but it's not me. I can show you how to put in the hard work and be uniquely you, and then build something up from that.
Yes, I love that. That goes back to that intentionality. When you are aligned with your purpose and, getting the message out, it's going to be much easier to be intentional. And I guarantee that when we think earlier, we had previously talked about episode 8 being that point where, man, it just falls apart for so many people. It just doesn't seem to go any further. And it probably is because that expectation that, well, I thought I was going to get 1 million downloads, but I'm sure you've seen that takes time. I'm guessing even with Lee's podcast, it probably took some momentum.
Yeah, Lee's podcast started off much better than any other show I've ever launched, but that was kind of expected. It's Lee Cockerell.
It's Lee.
But still, it took a lot of work to get to where it is now. And one of the reasons I've found, there's 3 reasons people give up soon, too early. One is editing can be a pain in the butt. Now, that alone doesn't make people give up. But if you don't like it, you don't like it, and it's a pain in the butt. The other is it's difficult to create content consistently. Enthusiasm will carry you through 5, 6, maybe 7 episodes. And then beyond that, the work begins. And then the third one is the field of dreams mindset, that if you build it, they will come. If you record it, she will listen. It doesn't happen that way. You have to keep showing up week after week and just put in the work and keep showing up. And you combine those 3, and after a couple of months, people are like, oh, it's just not worth it. No one's showing up. I'm not making my $10,000 a month. And then people walk away. And I know of people that will not be a guest on an episode, on a podcast, unless they have at least 11 episodes. Because if someone has 11, they've made it over the hump and they're serious and they're likely to keep going. And so there are some people that don't want to put in the time on a show that's just going to fade out pretty soon anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that is a very valid statement, and personally fueling my fire, like, well, I'm going to prove that wrong. But it's when you do have a format where you're inviting people in, time is money, and we all have a lot going on. And so if you're more consumed with your own success out of it, it's eventually going to either show through the show. The content won't feel as authentic. It'll feel more, I don't know. I've heard a few where it's like, wow, this is very contrived and it's not so fun. So I think that's a very fair statement. And it goes back to what I was thinking before with that 8 episode. I will always say I did a half marathon because I was at Disney and they had really cute medals. And I thought, I'm going to do it while I'm there. I swear, my friends and I decided to go for it. I hate running. I played soccer because I could chase a ball. That's why. It's ridiculous. But I knew I could do it, and I needed to do that hard thing. And so I will never forget, mile 9 was approaching the Tower of Terror sign on one of the main roads, not the attraction, but it's just it's been there for ages, this big, tall, mock Tower of Terror. And I remember looking at that, questioning every decision in my life. I'm like, why have I done this to myself? I'm miserable. I still have 4 miles. What is happening? But then I got to a point where I realized we were entering the parks, and suddenly I realized I was going back behind stage at Hollywood Studios, which is where I worked. And so then all the flood of memories came back. And then we ended up going down the center of Sunset Boulevard at Studios, and families are clapping. And I still get chills because I was like, oh my gosh, I still have miles, and these people are here and they're celebrating that we're doing it. And so I'm like trying not to cry because I hurt and because it's really cool. But then I go around to the World Showcase and I'm like, Katie, you've walked this before. You've done the laps, keep going. And sure enough, I crossed that finish line and I thought, I pretty much casually walked, not casually, I did a fast paced walk the last several miles, and I still did it. And it was truly one of the best memories I have. Do I have interest in doing another? Maybe not. But I think it's a testament to the fact that when we get over that hump, you start to see things differently. You start to realize like, oh, here's the value the podcast brings. I'm sure with you, once you started to do different aspects of Jody Maberry Show, talking about Uncle Jerry, probably even for you, I mean, I would imagine that opened up a side of you that you thought, I haven't really gone down this road, but maybe it's kind of nice. How would you say you've evolved in your podcasting in that way, where you got over the hump and now you're like, whoa, grass is greener?
Well, a lot of things come from experience and trying new things in podcasting and of course beyond that. When you're willing to talk about Uncle Jerry, for example, and as a reminder, Uncle Jerry died of COVID and it was terrible. It was, I had a hard time with it. And I talked about it, and I talked about having a hard time with it. So now someone like Katie listens, and it's no longer a show you listen to for entertainment. It's a connection you've made because your grandfather died and you learned some of the same lessons and now you felt it. So that's one thing that I learned, that if you can somehow cross that line, I don't even know what to call that line, but if you can cross it, and now it's not a show Katie listens to for entertainment, and it's not a show she just listens to learn something. It's a show that connected to her. And all of a sudden, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, all of a sudden, what I say after that is now more relevant because you've made a connection with me that wasn't there before. Yeah. So I learned that with the Uncle Jerry episode in particular, And that's that's why you tell stories in your podcast too.
Yeah.
To make that connection with people, especially if struggles. Everybody's had someone in their family die that they were close to. Everyone has done something like run a half marathon where they really wanted to give up on mile 9. Now, it's not literally a half marathon that they've run, but metaphorically, they have run a half marathon, and they metaphorically wanted to give up on mile 9, and something kept them going. And so you tell that story, and now people are like, oh, I get Katie. So that has come out through years of podcasting, because I think when I started, I would just blurt out questions. And then the Jody Maberry show was an effort to do things a little different and tell stories, and also try to entertain, and also try to make sure you learn something, but to tell stories. And it's been an experiment to see how things work. And I'll still have guests sometimes, but even that, I said, okay, if I'm going to have guests, how am I going to do that a little different? And I have the guest come back the next episode and ask me 3 questions.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to try something different. I tried it once and twice, and it seemed to work well. And people were asking me questions I wouldn't think to create content about. So that's one way it evolved. And a thing I'm currently trying is I have Cassie Tucker come on as a co-host now. It's the Jody Maberry show, but now Cassie's being more of a feature, because I thought, okay, I've done this for years and I'm so busy in everything else that I need Cassie there to keep me accountable, to make sure I'm putting episodes out.
Yeah.
She's also asked good questions and adds a different element to the show. So there's another evolution. And it just, that's the thing. It just, sometimes you find something that works and you stick with it for a long time. And sometimes it's time to try something different. And that's been an experiment for me on the Jody Maberry show, that I'll try an hour-long episode. How did that work? I'll try a 6-minute episode. How did that work? I'll bring in a co-host. How did that work? So that's the other thing about my show. It's kind of an experiment. And then I can see how it worked for when I'm working with other people. And like Lee Cockerell and I, we do 15-minute episodes for Creating Disney Magic. But we had Donald Miller on not too long ago. And I said, Lee, what if we just broke the mold this one time and just did a long interview with him? Yeah. And I think we did, I don't know, a 30-minute episode, which we'd never done before. But I thought, let's just try it and see. And if there was anyone we would do that for, it'd be Donald Miller, because he's got a book coming out, and he's always really popular when we have him on the show. So it's always pushing it just a little. What if I try this? What if I try that? And always trying to still be myself. And that's the thing. So my course is called Podcast Magic, and I'm going to spoil the whole course for you. Katie took the course, and I hope she learned this, that there's a lot of people that can tell you how to do it, the technical side and whatnot. And you could just find a podcast, say, I really enjoy Creating Disney Magic, I'm going to copy that formula. But the thing is, that might not work for you, because the magic in podcasting is you. There's only one show now that has Katie, right? There's no, so that's the magic about the show. The Jody Maberry show, I would say there's only one show that has Jody Maberry, but that's not true, because I'm on a lot of shows. But you get what I'm saying, that the magic is you and what you can do uniquely that other people can't do. And that's why you should not try to copy somebody. Sure, if you find a best practice, give it a try, but don't try to copy somebody, and be you. Tell your own stories, do your own thing. And for another quirky thing, on the end of every episode of the Jody Maberry show, after the end music, I've hidden something back there, and I've done it since like episode 24. I don't even know if people know it's there, but it's just a quirky little thing that I do. And that if you listen to the show, that's kind of your reward, that you feel like an insider because you know it's there, even if other people don't. So it's just another thing that I have tried on the show.
Well, and I love that, because this is another thing that I think the course did a great job of pulling out more thought-provoking questions about that content, about the story journey that I wanted to go through with this. But yeah, you could figure out how to make a podcast, but that was a huge add. Thinking about that little quirkiness, though, there's two thoughts to it. First, it goes to show why it shouldn't be 100%, because it's going to evolve. It's going to change. It goes all the way back to what we started saying. And I always have loved that little bit at the end of yours, to the point that now my son has really gotten into giving a fun fact for the end. So, you know what, the beauty in this is that while it's an opportunity for people to share their story or share their awareness, their understanding of things, it's also your own show. So do what you want. Add a spin. I'm very family oriented. And so why not incorporate my kids into this? Because that's what we do. Without their support, I got nothing. So
yeah.
I love that you've been able to add that quirk and keep yourself to it. So bringing it full circle back to the fact that you have made these connections, created so much opportunity for yourself and others. Let's focus on the celebration piece before we go. What is something maybe we haven't tapped into, but what is something we need to celebrate about Jody Maberry? To your own horn, let's shout out Jody, but what is something that you're really proud of?
I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to stay relevant in the world of parks and park rangers. I haven't been a park ranger in 10 years now. And I just did some training with Nevada State Parks. And I've now been invited to speak at the State Park Directors Conference in 2023. That I'm really proud of, to know that, because those are my people. Park people are my people. And after all this time, I've still managed to give value to them and stay relevant to them. And I probably don't celebrate that enough. And even I've had business people tell me, look, just drop it. It's just been a nice hobby. Just forget about the Park Leader Show. And I haven't done it. I've stuck with it. And so I'm proud of that I'm still finding a way to help out, perhaps in bigger ways than I could have if I was a park ranger. So all the other stuff is great. I love working with Disney people. My relationship with Lee Cockerell has been tremendous, but I like that I'm still in my roots of park rangers, and that after all this time, I'm still relevant there. So that to me, that's a celebration.
I love that. Be true to you. And you, I will say, truly are probably one of the most humble people that willingly shares your knowledge. You surround yourself with greatness and make sure to share that. So thank you so much for it. I look forward to revisiting in a year, and I'll say, okay, Jody, let's try this again. Let's see where we're at.
We're on 1 year from now.
Yes, it'll be the anniversary of the Bengals Super Bowl win. I'm just going to put it out there, right? So that's excellent. Right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jody. I appreciate everything you shared with us and look forward to that next conversation. And where can people find you in the meantime?
Well, the best place to start is jodymaberry.com. Everything is there. Or you can find me on the socials at Jody Maberry, except Instagram. I'm Sugar J Maberry. So you have to Sugar J Maberry on Instagram. But yeah, you can join me there and watch my Minute in Nature videos. And if you were to go to my Instagram, you'd think I was a travel blogger or something, because I rarely do business and I always talk about travels. But there we go.
Hey, again, it's yours. You can share what is meaningful to you. So
there you go. Yeah. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you, Jody.
Fun fact, the Bengals should have won the Super Bowl. Who they? Later, Taylor.